J. Swaminarayan. This is continuing recording by Sachin Karnik. This is part 2 of the Swaminarayan controversies recording in English. So I'm continuing that from the last recording. I was talking about the 11-year-old boy Ghanshyam leaving his home and the authenticity of these accounts. Like we said before, there was no satellites to take pictures or no cameras or anything like that. It's just based on accounts that were given by Maharaj himself and by his Paramahansas. And that's what they relayed. And if you look at the life of Swami Sahajanand in Gujarat, from the point that he was actually known, because he was traveling before that, there's no indication of him doing anything deceptive. So there's no reason to believe that he's going to be making something up or lying. And also, you got to keep in mind that he very reluctantly even talked about himself, even later on. And I'm going to get to all that later on, but I'm just trying to establish that, or at least I'm trying to present, maybe not establish, but trying to present objectively and openly that it, in my opinion, let me back up for a moment, because it's not even a question of my opinion. If you look at the statements that were written in the scriptures, the original Swaminarayan scriptures that were made at the time of Swami Sahajanand, there's really no reason to doubt that, because the people who were writing them, they were saints, they were Paramahansas, they were extraordinary individuals who were trying to create reforms in society. And the kind of life that they were living, it's very clear, I think, that to make up stuff, to lie about something at that level of realization is just beyond belief. So it's very, very hard to believe that any of this is false, that Swami Sahajanand actually, or Ghanshyam, that 11-year-old boy, left the home and all this. This is what has happened, Now, again, somebody can say that, well, how do you know that? How do you know that that actually happened? Well, if you want to doubt it, you can doubt all kinds of things. Because in today's world, we have video cameras, tape recorders, we have iPhones and cell phones and all kinds of things that record everything. But at that time, there wasn't any such thing. And they only had written materials, that's all. So that's what we have to go on. Now, if someone doesn't want to believe the incidences in the life of Ghanshyam and Nilkant Varni and Swami Sahajanand, if somebody doesn't want to believe that, that's your choice, that's, do what you want to do. Who cares? What difference does it make? But my opinion here is that I don't believe that there is any reason to doubt the authenticity of what is written by the Paramahansas. These were the great sages of Swami Sahajanand. So when they have written these incidences from the life of Maharaj, there is really no good reason to doubt this. That these things probably happen, or you can say that, yeah, they have happened. We can accept that. It's acceptable. It's not beyond belief that an 11-year-old boy can leave the home. He has certain realization, and he wants to leave the home, and he wants to go and meditate. It can happen. That's not beyond reason. It's also, possible to survive in very difficult situations. But however he did that, he did that. Assuming that he went to the different mountains, and he gave lots of descriptions of these different regions in the Himalayas and all that. And only someone who had been there could even give those kinds of descriptions. So assuming that the entire life of Nilkant Varni from age 11 through 18 is accurate, it's an extraordinary life for a human being in the human body. So I'm leaving aside all the different other beliefs right now. Just consider what the human body is capable of, and how is it that he did this. And one thing that you see here, and I'm going to go back to Nilkant Varni, and I apologize for jumping around a little bit, but I will try to keep things on track as much as possible. The one point that you can see running through his entire life is the absolute and unequivocal importance, like a tremendous importance, highest level importance placed on the conservation of sex energy, which is brahmacharya. You find that at the highest levels. I mean, it is just incredible. There's an incident that is recorded in the Swaminarayan scriptures where this Nilkanta Varani, once he enters into Gujarat and then eventually meets Ramanand Swami like puts some kinds of leaves on his body to try to release some of that sexual energy, through the perspiration and all that. But he had done this Nilkanta Varani had done this kind of extreme yoga and tapasya and penance and just amazing realization, where he would not allow even the semen to be discharged through perspiration. I mean, this is the kind of person he was, and if someone was to listen to all this, and because most of the world doesn't know who is Swaminarayan. They don't know. I mean, the people are going to the temples and all that. These politicians go to all these different temples. And they have no clue as to who is Swaminarayan. They probably don't care also. They're interested in politics and the different organizations are interested in political muscle or something like that. This actual reality of who is Swaminarayan is not known to most of the people. Even those people who are going to the Swaminarayan temples. Meaning the outside people. The people in the Sampradaya have a good understanding usually. At least to some extent. But my point here is that if you think about these incidences, if you think about the way he had developed himself in that body, where there was literally just bone and flesh left, there was just bone and skin. All the flesh was also mostly gone. All the muscles were gone almost, but he had this extraordinary power that was emitting through him, and people saw that. I mean, he had tremendous, Aishwarya and Siddhis and all kinds of stuff actually was there. And so anybody who would get in touch with him would see this extraordinary being. Now, keep in mind that to sublimate sex energy this way into pure Naishtika Brahmacharya, which is called Urdhvareta Naishtika Brahmacharya, for extended periods of time, and in fact not just for the whole life, but in his case during the youth and during time when there is so much power for sexual desire, etc. And he took all that and transmuted the whole thing through yoga, eightfold yoga, and so that kind of a spiritual feat is extraordinary, very, very amazing. I mean, and those people who do not study this life this way, or do not understand Ashtanga Yoga, and are simply criticizing, Swaminarayan Sampradaya, or they're criticizing Nilkanta Varani, or whatever they're doing, this has absolutely no meaning or value. The fact is, let's go into what is Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga has it's an eightfold movement into higher consciousness, into samadhi. It's yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. These are eightfold steps. They're quite intricate, and I'm not going to explain them all here. But the fact that he had achieved this, is a testament to what is possible in the human body. And the insistence on the conservation and sublimation of the sexual power, and with that, performing bhakti, tremendous amount of devotion he was performing. He had a shaligram with him, So let's be very clear. Let's look at the facts. Let's not go based on propaganda of anybody, inside or outside the Sampradaya or whoever. There's all kinds of propaganda, all kinds of distortions. There's all kinds of false ideas that are being propagated also. Let's just stick to the facts, and you will see what exactly happened here. So he had left his home at the age of 11. He had taken this shaligram with him. He had also extracted the essence of the scriptures and kept that with him. He had kept a kopin with him, which is like a garment that you wear to protect or to cover the private part. He was a brahmachari, and he was roaming. I mean, he's roaming inside the forest and inside nature. He's like a Vedantic sannyasi, but with bhakti. It's there's all these sannyasis who have also roamed the forest, but they don't worship anybody. They just said Aham Brahmasmi, I am supreme, I am everything. So, and that's, they have no worship towards anyone. They consider themselves as a supreme. That was not the case in the life of Nilkanta Varani. Look at how he did his sadhana. He did sadhana. So he's a sadhak also. Sadhak meaning one who is performing spiritual practices. He's a sadhak. And he did sadhana. These are just the facts. And he had the Shaligram with him. He's worshipping Vishnu. Shaligram is a form of Vishnu. He's offering whatever food he gets, he's offering that to Bhagwan Vishnu, with tremendous amount of devotion. There are times, long periods of time when there's no food available. There are very difficult circumstances inside forests and inside deep areas where sunlight doesn't even penetrate through. There's all kinds of wild animals and all kinds of dangers, but leaving every kind of fear aside, leaving aside the feeling that I'm the body, at that level, folks, it's very easy for anybody to sit inside huge or huge temples and say, I am not the body. Huge temples or offices or homes or wherever, and with all kinds of food coming and everything, which it's okay. That's also fine. Right now we have all that. For example, I'm sitting in my place right now, in my office, in my home right now. I can easily say, oh, I'm Brahman, I'm Atma, I'm this, I'm fearless. I can easily say that. But it's a couple of things change here and there. Very difficult. There's no, we'll see how much fear comes about right away. So the point is that this level of fearlessness, which is at the highest level, where there is no concern even about the body, that the body might survive or not. What kind of mental attitude is that? I mean, this is, it's worth contemplating just on that kind of mindset. What is that mindset? And I think if we went just into that mindset alone, we ourselves would become completely free of all kinds of minor and major disturbances that are afflicting us. Because this Nilkant Varani, this extraordinary teenager, he's not concerned about anything except continuing his spiritual progression. And he's asking this question: what is Jiva, Ishvara, Maya, Akshara Brahma, Parabrahma? These 5 things, this question he's asking. Right? As a sadhak, in the role of a sadhak or as a sadhak, those who are listening, you can think of this however you want, because many who are listening to this may have never heard of Swaminarayan. So I want to introduce who he is in a very basic way. And there really are, like I said, a whole lot of controversies and misunderstandings, and I'm going to get into all that stuff. But I think, anybody who is doing research and trying to understand the life of Nilkant Varani, just look at these points. Going into total nature, there's no guarantee of any food, water, clothing, shelter, nothing. And what an extraordinary state that must be, So the point is that this Nilkant Varani, he also goes to the various holy places. Now, obviously, why is he doing that? Well, he was going to holy places even when he was in Chapaya, in the different village temples and all that. Again, it shows his connection and his total acceptance of the Sanatana Dharma, of Bhagwan Vishnu, Bhagwan Shiv, Jagannath Ji, Balaji, Vitthal from Maharashtra. He went to all these places, Pandharpur, and all these places. He went everywhere. And he is showing the significance of the incarnations that have occurred in the past. So anybody today who criticizes Swami Sahajanand and says that he has ignored all the past avatars and all that, that is absolutely ridiculous and is false. And it's just not true. And anybody who tries, whether one is in the Sampradaya or outside the Sampradaya, to discard the avatars and to state that Swami Sahajanand has nothing to do with these avatars is just totally off track. That's not how he lived. That's not what he did. he gave tremendous importance to all of the incarnations that came, and particularly he gave a tremendous amount of importance to Sri Krishna. And that is just an undisputable fact. So anybody who tries to discard the avataras, whoever it might be, and says Swami Sahajanand discarded the avataras, or any such idea, directly or indirectly, is just false. And anybody who states that Sahajanand Swami was just an ordinary sadhak, or just a social reformer, or just a like a social worker, like a social reformer, did some good work in society, that is also false. That's not true. Of course, he did those good works and all that. It's much more than that. I mean, if you just look at this thing about him leaving at the age of 11 and going into the Himalayas and mastering Ashtanga Yoga and doing this type of incredible penance, and then going to all the different tirth and asking this question about Jivishwar Maya Brahm Parabram, and going through all that, he's not just a social reformer. There's something more here. And that's what Muktanand Swami saw when he saw him. There were two other sages also who had seen him first in Loj, in a village called Loj, and they said, "This is an extraordinary being. Who is this?" And the fact that he was able to maintain his body with that level of this realization, that is also something extraordinary, because there are places in Vachanamrita, in some other places also, where he's talked about the Atma. The Atma is Satchidananda. It's the real form of who we are. And the entire Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition, accepts the reality of the Atma. Atma meaning the soul, the divine spark, the divine reality that we are. And he made a statement in the Vachanamrut. He said that he had realization that he is an Atma, he is the Satchidananda divine soul. That realization was there even before he entered into the womb of the mother. This is a statement he has made. Now, if you look at the people in today's world who are outside the Swaminarayan Sampradaya, and who have either not studied the scriptures or who have not looked at the teachings and life of Maharaj, they don't talk about him. He's pretty much ignored by the big kathakars and everybody else. And I'm forced to wonder why they ignore him. What is the reason to ignore an extraordinary being of this sort? I won't give any names of anyone, but I'm not here to criticize anyone. I'm just pointing things out, that there are some really extraordinary, amazing spiritual teachers and leaders in India today. But you don't hear any of them, or hardly any of them, mention anything about the teachings or the life of Swami Sahajanand. Maybe because they disagree with some things that he has written. That's possible. Or maybe because they disagree with, the way the Sampradaya has evolved now. I don't know. Whatever the reasons may be, what I know as an independent student, researcher, and as a sadhak, what I do know is that this was an extraordinary being, or at least this is my belief, that this is an extraordinary being who must not be ignored. That is why I created the website swaminarayanspirituality.com for the whole world, to be, so that he can be introduced in the right way, where people come to their own understanding. And again, I'm not trying to bring people into a particular organization, or get somebody out of an organization, or to try to divide the religious community. That is not the case at all. And it is my belief that Swami Sahajanand was the embodiment. This is just my own belief, and through study and experience, he embodied the entire 10,000-year history of Hindu spirituality. This is just my objective analysis and belief. And if somebody wants to know what that is, listen to my audios. That's part of it. But if you want to come and meet with me personally, you're welcome to do so, because I can show you from almost any angle why that is the case. We just talked about the Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Yoga, which is very, very difficult to master. Because when you master Ashtanga Yoga, you realize the Atma. You go beyond the 7 chakras, beyond the Sahasrara chakra, and into the divine reality. That is called Akshara Brahma or Brahmadham, or it's called, there are so many different names for it. Whatever it is, it's a realization. And when that realization occurs, one is beyond what is called Maya. Even the Tantra traditions in the Himalayas have talked about, left-handed and right-handed Tantra traditions have talked about this. And Tantra is a totally different approach than the yoga approach, you see. But in my opinion, even Bhagwan Swaminarayan was a student of Tantra, but he has not mentioned that anywhere. The reason behind that is because those paths are misunderstood, and there's a tremendous amount for tremendous level of misunderstanding that can happen. So he did not talk about that directly, but he has talked about energy and Shakti over and over and over again, and his own insistence on brahmacharya and the 8-fold brahmacharya called Ashtanga brahmacharya is a right-handed Tantra tradition concept. So he must have studied this at some point, because not everything is written down, but if you kind of read between the lines, you can find the history behind this. And this is what is so amazing. The right-handed Tantra path is where the 8-fold brahmacharya was actually developed. And that is thousands of years back. And I can show you the books on that, what the references are, who the teachers are, all that thing. So my point is that Nilkant Varani, in his yogic mystical fervor, he was aware of all paths, because once you reach the highest level, you can see everything from there. You see, so as a sadhak, he reached this entire path. And keep in mind, he made his guru Gopal Yogi. Again, he's showing the importance of going to an enlightened master. He's in the role of a sadhak. If you say that this is an incarnation of God, leave all that stuff aside for the time being. See that he's just an 11-year-old boy who is trying to realize God. Look at that, just from that angle. And he's going to an enlightened master who is proficient in yoga, and that is Gopal Yogi. And there are some other yogis apparently he had gone to also. And he had mastered all different kinds of yogasanas and so many different things. And he had also, for 4 months in Pulhashram in the Himalayas, chanted Gayatri Mantra. This is a point that is not mentioned many times by many of the people in Swaminarayan Sampradaya today. I don't know why they don't mention it, but they don't mention it, So that's on them. But I'm mentioning it here. Because Gayatri Mantra is nothing but Devi Upasana. That is a Shakti Upasana. And if anybody says that Bhagwan Swaminarayan or Swami Sahajanand or Nilkant Varani does not believe in the goddess Devi, they are out of their mind. That's absolutely ridiculous. The Gayatri Mantra is a Devi Upasana. It is a Upasana of the Surya, and it is the energy inside the Surya, which is Shakti, and it is a Shakti Upasana. For sure. And that kind of sadhana he had done on one foot in Pulhashram, showing the importance of Gayatri Mantra, showing what can be achieved through that, showing the necessity of Vedic mantras. Again, Nilkant Varani chanted Gayatri Mantra. He probably knew many other mantras also. He was, of course, chanting the Krishna mantras and the Narayan mantras. These things were also there. He was worshipping Shaligram. He was wearing Kanthi. He's in the form of a devotee, and the highest level of Vedantic realization of the Atma and the Brahman, the Atma and the Akshara are one. This realization, tremendous sublimation of sex energy, mastery in Ashtanga Yoga. Folks, why is it that nobody's talking about this outside the Sampradaya? I've been studying all this for years. I haven't heard anybody talk about this outside the Sampradaya. And within the Sampradaya, there is so much emphasis on Sahajanand Swami being beyond the avatars and Sarvopari Padu and different, these highly esoteric and metaphysical ideas, that what has happened is that the connection with the Sanatana Dharma that should be there, which is actually the life of Swami Sahajanand, Nilkant Varani, that connection is not harnessed. In fact, there's more emphasis on how there is difference rather than actual connection. Of course, there are different interpretations. There are different ideas. Different organizations have different philosophies that they're trying to propagate, different approaches, whatever it may be. But the fact is that Sahajanand Swami and Nilkant Varni, this same person, Sahajanand Swami as Nilkant Varni as Swami Sahajanand, Swaminarayan, who is known as Swaminarayan, that being totally and unequivocally maintained the Sanatana Dharma and extracted from the Sanatana Dharma the highest level of spirituality needed for Aitantika Mukti, for the final liberation. Ashtanga Yoga is the highest form of yoga from yoga point of view. From the Vedantic point of view, he accepted Ramanujacharya's Vishishta Advaita. You see? Very interesting. And that's a big topic in itself. Then he had his own perspective on a modification of Vishishta Advaita. That's why he was asking that question. What is Jeev, Ishwar, Maya, Akshar, Brahm, Parabrahm? He's asking the question because, in my opinion, again, it's just only my opinion, he's looking for an answer that's kind of fitting with his understanding. And he's also seeing, he's getting like an overview of what's going on in India. Where is the Tattvagnan? What are the sadhus like? He's getting a broad view. What are the rituals like? How are the temples built? So he's learning all that. So, and this is what happened. Boy, there's so much to say. It's a little difficult for me, but I'm trying to stay on track here. See, the personality of this young boy who had left this home was a personality, and his spiritual realization was integrative, not fragmentary, divisive. It is not fragmentary, it is not divisive, it is not groupism. Anybody who believes that Sahajanand Swami or Nilkant Varni had any kind of groupism in mind is out of their mind. This groupism is out of the picture. Groupism may be there today, but that's not who he was. And the sampradaya that eventually evolved in Gujarat, but he was not from Gujarat to begin with. He was from UP. He was a Sarvariya Brahmin. He was born in that family. But his realization is such. He says, I don't belong to any caste, any creed, nothing at all. Because he's the Atma. He realized that he's the Atma. He said that I am a mukta, I'm a liberated soul all the time. So he's born liberated, living liberated. This is his statement. And again, these statements that are being made, others have made these statements like this. Anybody can make such a statement. How much time does it take to make a statement? But the kind of power that he exhibited, the kind of effulgence was so attractive that during his own lifetime, I believe it's around 2 million people, if I'm not mistaken, if that number is correct. It's a very large number of people that accepted him as Satpurush, as Guru, and as incarnation of God, or as a divinity incarnate. Or as the Supreme Lord himself. However it was, so many became his disciples. He had initiated over 3,000 sadhus. That's that's a tremendous accomplishment in up to the age of 49. So about 30 years he stayed in Gujarat, and then at the age of 49 he left his body. So when we look at the facts, there's a lot of all this controversy. There's all kinds of controversies about so many things about Swaminarayan Sampradaya. But my point is simply that those who claim to be propagating Sanatana Dharma and are wanting to show the great unitiveness of the great teachings of the sages, and there have been so many tremendous people all throughout India, and of course even in other traditions too, but we're keeping our focus on the Indian tradition. To ignore Swami Sahajanand the way he has been ignored for the last 100 years by almost everybody on the outside, for a variety of reasons, I think, it just shows that there is a lack of proper study. There is a lack of understanding of the extraordinary spiritual achievements of this 11-year-old boy. And to deliberately ignore this one sage, one person, and to emphasize so many others, where is the spirituality in that? So again, it's just my opinion that Swami Sahajanand, what he did was so extraordinary, and it was the highest level of integration that at least I have ever seen. Again, other sages were also integrated this way. Even Ramakrishna Paramahansa, he practiced so many different sadhanas. And at one point he became a Muslim also. He became a Christian also. He became a Devi worshipper. He was worshipping Devi, of course. Then he had the Guru Totapuri, and he talked about this Nirakara Brahma and Vedantic realization. So many things are there. So sages go through their own journey, their own experiences. And it's their realization. They're really not concerned about anybody else. They're living in their own glory. They're not worried about anybody else. Even this Nilkant Varani, when he comes to Gujarat, he and the senior sage Muktanand Swami, they had agreed to go back into the Himalayas and do continuous dhyana, because there's nothing more glorious than meditation. Once you have tasted that glory of meditation, dhyana, you don't want anything else. That there's that kind of nectar in that. And again, that is also shown from his charitra. Nilkant Varani was a roaming sannyasi, roaming from the age of 11. And when he finally met Ramanand Swami gave him Diksha, named him Swami Sahajanand, and then basically, said to him, you have to stay here and run this organization and show people the pathway back into the Akshardham and all these things, so that all happened afterwards. But otherwise, if he had not met Ramanand Swami, he would be just continuing to go back into the Himalayas, because that is where the Ashtanga Yoga was accomplished. And whatever realization experiences he had at that time, those things are extraordinary and they stay with you. So you want to always go back to that. And who wants to stay and worry about, all the different disciples and all the different Guru Parampara and all the and so many things that come, money comes, and then and there's temples and there's this and there's that. Who wants to deal with all that? So in the role of a sannyasi, in the role of a renunciate monk or tyagi, in that role, he's showing his total dislike for organization. Clearly, when Ramanand Swami offered him or said to him that, you have to sit on my gadi, on this spiritual throne that is called the gadi, I believe he said, I don't know where it is written, but it's probably in Satsangi Jivan or some other place. He said it in Hindi, because he used to speak in Hindi. He didn't even know Gujarati actually. He used to speak in Hindi, and he said to him, Guru Maharaj, is choti se gaddi se kya hoga? I'm saying in Hindi, I'll translate for you. Is choti se gaddi se kya hoga? Ye sab vishwa hamari gaddi hai. He says that the whole universe, whole world, everything this is my throne. This is where I'm roaming. This is my whole place is mine. What is this small seat of the Guru going to do? It's meaningless. He completely threw that idea out. But Ramanand Swami gave him the agna that you have to do this. Otherwise, if you don't do this, then there's just so many people waiting to get liberation. How they will get liberation? You are an enlightened being. You have to do this thing. This was the basic idea. So then he agreed to that. But there were times in the life of Sahajanand Swami that he wanted to go back to the Himalayas. His mind was always there. You have to keep this in mind. And you and me both. We all have to keep this in mind, that his mind and his thoughts were always in the Himalayas. He said so. Amne van parvat gamach. He said, I like forests. I like mountains. He did not like cities and the crowds and all this thing. I mean, even when the Murti Pratishtha had occurred of Narnarayan Dev in the Ahmedabad temple, which the first temple he had built, I think it's Garada Madhya 22 Vachanamrut. In there he saw all the people he saw. He says, I want to just forget all this thing, Sankhya, because he doesn't want anything in the mind to be cluttered with anything. And that's the yogi. True yogis, don't want any clutter inside their mind. They realize that the mind is a pristine place for God to shine and nothing else. No family members, no people of this world, no objects of attachment. None of these things should clutter the mind. So again, you see in the role of a devotee as a sadhak, in that role, or in that with that kind of activity, you see him in the role of a sadguru also, that he's teaching his paramahansas and sadhus and devotees that, look, realize this. Because essentially, what is he trying to do? Any guru, any sadguru is trying to recreate what they have experienced. Doesn't matter if it's a true guru, and it's not just the spiritual gurus. It's the same thing at the universities. We have so many teachers in school. They're simply trying to reproduce the realization that they have. So in that sense, even Garada Madhya 13, Maharaj he's trying to reproduce that realized state of a mukta. And he starts with that. And again, I know I'm diverting a little bit. But the point is that in the form of a Sadguru, he is trying to bring about a certain type of realization that goes beyond the three states of Jagrat, Swapna, Shushupti, Avastha. Now you go into the Hindu scriptures, and what do you find? You find Adi Jagat Guru Shankaracharya ji. If you read Vivek Chudamani, you go through every book written by Shankaracharya, what do you find? You find him making this one singular point that you are the Atma, you are that Atma is the Akshara Brahma. Atma and Brahma is one. And this Jagrat, Sapna, Shushupti is to be transcended. This point is made by Sahajanand Swami over and over and over and over again. And he lived that. So what he did, he realized, it's not just his scholarly aptitude, but his own realization, because there was both. The scholarly synthetical aptitude is there, and the actual realization that is his own realization that the scriptures are talking about, and things that the scriptures don't even talk about, he's also mentioned. So you see this tremendous synthesis of Shankaracharya ji's teaching of the Atman beyond the three bodies. You go through Vachanamrita, you will see this over and over and over and over again. And in any Swaminarayan scripture you pick up, you'll see this point. But again, this point is never talked about by all these people outside the Sampradaya. Why they're ignoring this? Why they ignore Sahajanand Swami this way? It really shows. I mean, I hate to say this, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, because I have nothing but love and respect for everybody right now. But it shows deliberately ignoring the extraordinary realization of Sahajanand Swami and his teachings. Even in the form of a sadhak or as a guru or as a sadguru, even that is not even talked about. So this is very interesting. But anyway, so it is because of these reasons that this website has been created. SwaminarayanSpirituality.com is created specifically just for these reasons, so that the actual spirituality of Sahajanand Swami can actually be presented to the world without fragmentation, without division, divisiveness, one versus another, and presented as is for people to understand and progress along that if they want, or take what they want from there. I'm not saying that everybody is going to have to leave what they're doing and join one of these Swaminarayan organizations. I'm not saying that at all. You do what you want. But the fact is that Sahajanand Swami synthesized the entire 10,000 history of Sanatana Dharma. And I can show you how that is done. And I'm not trying to say others haven't done that also. Others have done that. Ramakrishna Paramahansa did something like that, definitely. But Ramakrishna Paramahansa was living in this Nirvikalpa Samadhi state. There are things that even Sahajanand Swami has mentioned that are different from Ramakrishna Paramahansa. That the fact that there is this Chidakash, which is the end point of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He says beyond that is a form of Akshara Brahma and form of Parabrahma. These things are not mentioned Yeah, I mean, you don't see Raymond Ramakrishna Paramahansa really mentioning that, because he had his realization, whatever realization he had, and again, that was his realization. People thought he was a psychiatric patient or a mad person or something like that. At one point he had taken a sword. This is Ramakrishna Paramahansa I'm talking about. He had taken a sword, and he was standing in front of the goddess Kali, Mother Kali, and said, "If you don't give me darshan, I'm going to cut my head off." Now, is a normal person going to do something like that? So this is, but then she actually came right in front of him and then gave him blessings and whatnot, and then he had the realization. It's a tremendous text. If you go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, it's an incredible study, and it is worth studying these things also. So anyway, my point is, Sahajanand Swami, what he did was he maintained the foundation of the Vishnu worship, of the Krishna worship. He kept that as the base, because without a base you can't go anywhere. But he did that while integrating Patanjali's yoga, while integrating Adi Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta, and integrating, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I can prove it in a certain way, he integrated left-handed and right-handed tantra in a very interesting way. Which most people have never talked about in the Swaminarayan Sampradaya. They haven't even studied it, and they may not even know about it. But what that is an ancient tradition from the Himalayas, which was nearly destroyed at one point. But somehow Oxford University actually preserved, all of the original Tantra texts. They're extraordinary texts, extraordinary. And there are some new books written now actually about this, and there's an author. His name is Chris Wallace, and he's a PhD professor, and his dissertation was on Tantra and all this. So I'll show you where the connectors are. The Eightfold Brahmacharya, that is from Tantra. Very interesting. The emphasis on Rasik Bhakti, the kind of bhakti that Maharaj has talked about. There's this intense devotion, right? That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that is Rasik Bhakti, and that is a fusion of Radha and Krishna within oneself. That fusion within oneself is possible through the Brahmacharya energy, and that energy, when it is fused together, then that opens up the doorway into Golok Dham. Now, these things are not even understood by most people. They have never even talked about these things, or what the connections are, because Maharaj himself was in an ecstatic state. Ramakrishna Paramahansa was in an ecstatic state, but now if you look at Vachanamrut, he has shown the deficiencies or the problems that can happen in Rasik Marg. He said the Rasik path, and there's path of Brahma Vidya. In the Rasik path, which has happened in the Vaishnava traditions and so many others, there's so much emotional activation. Divine emotion can happen. But when a person comes down from that, because there's so much pleasure that is obtained in that ecstatic state, that without proper vairagya and proper understanding or realization of the Atma, one will go right back into the Vishayas. And this is exactly what Sahajanand Swami has taught. So now here's another point. The level of psychological depth that is there in the teachings of Sahajanand Swami is so much beyond. I mean, if you take 100,000 or if you take 1,000,000 books in psychology, they are not even 1% of what Swami Sahajanand has explained in Vachanamrut. This is a fact. This is a fact based on my study. And if you want the proof, come and spend a week with me. I'll prove it to you. Now, on this point, the esoteric teachings, even of people like J. Krishnamurti, and if you look at the Theosophical Society, the Secret Doctrine, written by Madame Blavatsky, and the whole Theosophical movement, they talked about the masters. They talked about liberated beings. And there's a book written by even J. Krishnamurti at the age of 16 when he was in trance with his guru, C.W. Ledbetter. And that book is called At the Feet of the Master. And that book talks about these 4 principles, Dharma, Gnana, Vairagya, Bhakti. And he said that there's a master that is teaching me these four. Now, did J. Krishnamurti know anything about Swaminarayan? Of course not. But in trance, he saw a being who is teaching him this. I can prove that to you also. It's called At the Feet of the Master. You can take any scripture. If you look at the Bible, and if you look at the extraordinary developments in Christianity, okay, there is so much emphasis, of course, on Jesus, but you may not be aware that there are really extraordinary teachings all around in Christianity and within the Bible that talk about taking the devotee of God, one who has accepted Jesus, and making that person more Christ-like, or where Jesus actually lives inside that person. Okay, so these ideas are certainly there, and if you go through that, it is actually called, I'll tell you what it's called right now, there's a name for that. It's called sanctification. Now, this is a very interesting Christian term. It's one of the highest levels in Christian spirituality, called sanctification. This notion of sanctification is where a person has accepted Jesus Christ and is now trying to do the best he or she can to become more Christ-like, so that Christ himself, God himself, lives inside this being, and the person's sins are all destroyed, or they're totally transgressed at the highest level of sanctification. Look it up. Just Google sanctification. Just put sanctification PDF. You'll find thousands of articles on this thing and books on this thing. This idea is emphasized over and over and over and over again by Sahajanand Swami in the form of a devotee, where he has shown the love of the gopis towards Krishna. The gopis were inside such ecstatic states. In the Shikshapatri, Shlok number 111, he has stated that at times Radha, who is the highest gopi, and this is based on Srimad Bhagavatam and all, in the Ras Panchadhyay, Radha, who is the highest devotee of Krishna, is sometimes merged inside Krishna, and he should be known as one. So in one sense, that is non-dualistic Vedanta, but it is not exactly non-dualistic. It is really qualified non-dualistic. There's a merging there. And that is very, very similar, if not nearly identical, to the highest state of sanctification in Christianity. And the Christians who were there during the time of Sahajanand Swami, they respected him and considered him as essential for stability of the moral order in society. There were Muslims who were attracted to him. They came to him and they said, "This is a form of the divine. It's a great being who has come to us." You see, there were Jains. There were. I mean, it doesn't matter who. It's not just human beings. There were animals who used to go into trance. So these things are so tremendous that ignoring Sahajanand Swami, the way this has happened by most of the people outside of Swaminarayan Sampradaya, and not giving any reference to him under any context, or on top of that, making snide comments and giving negative comments indirectly, as some are prone to do, it shows their lack of maturity, and it also shows a deliberate attempt to ignore an extraordinary spiritual being. And to me, that is not acceptable. It's just totally unacceptable that should be the case. That is why you go to swaminarayanspirituality.com. In that website, there are links to all the current Swaminarayan organizations. And please understand, I'm not in any way advocating that somebody should go to a particular organization or should become a devotee of Swaminarayan or anything like that. It's up to you. You do what you want to do. All right? But all I'm saying here is that this is my small effort to bring out the extraordinary synthetical spirituality of Sahajanand Swami. And if you go through his life, you go through what he did, you go through each and every activity, you find a tremendous synthesis. A synthesis like none other. He has even said Shiva and Vishnu are one, Shikshapatri. They should be considered as one. There's so much division between the followers of Shiva and Vishnu all throughout India. Even today it's there. He broke through that. He elevated everyone into the devotee status. He showed the purification, the different types of purification of the senses, of the mind, of the indriyas, and he showed the dangers in spiritual paths. For example, like the left-handed tantra path, which is a very tricky path, because I have written a book on sexuality, sex, energy, and orgasmic ecstasy, and it's a book that is available online. And if you want a paper copy of it, just let me know. I have discussed that path as well as the right-handed tantra path, and why. And again, I'm going to be talking more about this later on sometime in other publications. But Sahajanand Swami, totally stopped the left-handed path, and he said, "Don't go on that path at all." You see, now that path is for those who have intense level of vasana, desires, and are actually in a relationship. They're the grahasthas. Now he has said that as long as that desire for sexual gratification exists and one is a devotee of God, it's a pure devotee, but this desire is there, that he said that is, in Gujarati, he said, Char Charanar Vindi Upasana, and the maximum level where he will go to is Goloka. And in Goloka, that sexual pleasure is still there in some different way, but it's still there. Now, folks, this is written in Vedas. So that is an indication that the left-handed tantra path is there. But he has not talked about that because of the disastrous consequences of the sadhus trying to implement such a path, and he called them Kundapanthi, the 4 kinds of kusangis. Because what they were doing, they were trying to use the sexual energy, and they had all these different women disciples, and they would have sex with all of them, in different ways, and they would say that is some kind of a, diksha and all this kind of thing. This was going on even at that time, at the time of Sahajanand Swami, and it went on even before him for a long time. But what happens in that is written in Dharmamrut. Once you start hyper-stimulating the sexual power, your consciousness, your atmic consciousness, goes below the Muladhara chakra and you wind up in the different life forms of the bugs and ants and insects and trees and all the lower life forms. That is why he showed the danger in that path and shut that thing off completely. Nonetheless, but those who are devotees of God and are very much interested in sexual gratifications and these things, he has said that as a grahastha, you want to have vairagya. Read Garada Pratham number 2 Vachanamrut. He said about vairagya, he said udas thaki bhog. He means that there's an enjoyment, but it's an enjoyment which is where you are aware that all of this is very limited, but the enjoyment is still going on. Then that goes back to Bhagavad Gita about interacting with the Vishayas without raga and dvesha. It's very intricate, and it would take me hours to explain all that and to go into it, which we're going to do. But my point is that even householder devotees like Parvat Bhai and Govardhan, both of them had multiple children. Parvat Bhai had some 9 kids, in his lifetime. So he wasn't having sexual gratification? Come on, of course, obviously. But his mind was not there. Just physically this activity is going on, but his mind is completely in God, even while that activity is going on. Now think about that. Now how do you reconcile this with this kind of intense brahmacharya of Sahajanand Swami himself? Do you see? But that reconciliation is shown in Garada Pratham number 2 Vachanamrut. So this kind of intricacy where Parvat Bhai is engaged in sexual contact, where he has 9 kids, and Maharaj himself said that his state of realization is beyond even most of the Paramahansas. Now, how is that possible? That is Tantra. That is the fusion of left and right-handed Tantra. That's the reality. But he hasn't used that expression. He deliberately put it in a very different way. It's kind of written in code, actually. So the installment of the Radhika Ji's Murti, Vame Yasya Sitarada, that's the code for left-handed Tantra. And which shows that the Grahastha Ashram, which is filled with sexual entanglements and materialistic pleasures. And while that is going on, there is satsang going on at the same time. And, so both of these things are going on at the same time. Maharaj said you engage in the grahastha ashram with your wife and then you live as a brahmachari otherwise, but you keep your restriction there, and you can interact with the vishayas even if they're of the highest quality with vairagya, and you keep your nishta, your focus on God, on Bhagwan. And then he also talked about himself in that regard. He said in the Vedas that as long as that both desires are there, one will go into Goloka. Now think about this. It's one heck of a statement. It's so much beyond anybody's understanding. I mean, if I had to explain this thing just from what I have understood, it would take me 1,000 hours just to explain, what exactly Garada number 2 Vachanamrut is about and how that connects with the teachings of Vedavyasa and the Himalayan masters in the Tantra tradition, how that connects with Patanjali Yoga, how that connects with physiology and psychology and anatomy, how all these things are connected together, and it's extracted in the most extraordinary way inside the Vachanamrut. Now, who can do this? I mean, Maharaj had these Paramahansas who were writing this Vachanamrut, and they were taking notes and writing, and then they compiled the whole scripture together, showed it to Maharaj, and then he approved it. It goes to show the level of synthesis. It's just so amazing and extraordinary, because in the life of Sahajanand Swami, he had all these different kathakars lined up. There were Srimad Bhagavatam going on, Bhagavad Gita going on, Vyas Sutra going on, and the Vachanamrut is where he has taken pause in that, or asked people to take pause, or people have come and asked questions. It's really, these are just intermittent statements that are made amidst this continuous katha, varta, bhajan, kirtan, continuous contemplation. Think of this environment. An environment where there is 24-hour contemplation going on, Manan Chintan, Shastra Patan. Different scriptures are brought from all different places, and they're all laid out. And Sahajanand Swami he's lost in them. This is his charitra. There in that Cheshta, the Premanand Swami has written Cheshta, even while eating food, he will remember something from the Katha, and he will say, Hare, Hare. He'll, like something that resonated with him, like, wow, this is awesome. You know how we say, this is awesome. This is the kind of person he was. And again, his total acceptance in a synthetical way of everything that is going to lead to moksha, even the 8 forms of murtis that are installed. He installed, in his time, 6 temples were built. Some people believe 9, but I think that pretty much we can say 6 temples were built. About the path of bhakti, how to do the bhakti. He himself had the Shaligram from before. He was worshipping Krishna also in the form of a devotee. All this thing was there, so, and as time went on in his own life, he installed his own form as Hari Krishna Maharaj inside Vartal. Now, some people believe, that he did that. Why? There's only 2 answers. There's 3 answers to that. One is because he has some ego and he just wants people to worship him. That's one answer, which I don't accept, obviously. Another answer is that he realized such a state where he became equal to Krishna from an Advaitic standpoint, just like the gopis would say, Aham Krishna, like that. That's another answer. And another answer is that his entire manifestation, this is actually the Mool Sarup, the actual original tattva of God coming in human form in this way, and that is emphasizing that tattva is emphasizing to connect with him, connect with Sahajanand Swami, in that human form, and through the Swaminarayan mantra. So the point is that all of this is part of the history. But if you look at all these controversies that are there, what you find is a being who has synthesized and presented the spirituality in such a way that opens the doorway into the final liberation. He said himself, I have come here to destroy the causal body. Karana sharir ke nash ke liye avatar hua hai. What is the causal body? Causal body is something you can see. You just close your eyes and sit in a very dark place for like 5 minutes. In that total darkness that you see, without any thoughts, that is a causal body. That is called Karan Sharira. And beyond that is who you are, actually. Because you're watching that darkness. If you identify with that darkness, that's not who you are. So, his insistence upon the Ekantika Dharma, Dharma, Gnana, Vairagya, and Bhakti, these 4 principles he extracted from Vasudeva Mahatmya. He took the best from everyone and everywhere, showed where the deficiencies were, got rid of the deficiencies, kept the actual essence, and then on that basis moved ahead. Absolutely incredible. There's no question about that. He maintained the Vaishnava tradition. He maintained the respect for the avatars. He installed the avatars in every temple. He showed synthesis, and on that basis, gave initiation to 3,000 individuals. 500 were paramahansas. So all of this was done by him, and when you really look at extraordinary spiritual power like the Samadhi Prakaran, placing people in trance, these things are not ordinary. Assuming that they happen, which again I don't doubt that they did, because there's no reason for the Paramahansas to lie, or anybody else to lie really about that. Assuming that they happen, then it kind of goes to show, what this individual was. What is it that he was trying to propagate, and why did he come, and what is this all about? You see? And you can look at the spirit of service, the spirit of love for the devotees. There's a Vaishnava concept, love the devotees. He's a devotee of the devotee. Sevak napan sevak, this idea. Bhakta napan bhakta. All this thing, he did all this thing. There's not a thing, if you look at the traditional Hindu spirituality, he completely transmuted that whole spirituality or showed it in such a way and synthesized it. Even, people say like Devi Upasana, there's no Durga. All 9 forms of Durga which are there, these 9 forms are the Devi Tattva. And Bhagwan Swaminarayan, Swami Sahajanand has said, has accepted that energy is there. And in the Shikshapatra, he said accepted all 5 Devatas. Parvati is there. So Parvati is the Mool Swarup inside Kailasa. So, in fact, he had even done a yagna of Devi in Jetalpur. There's even historical reference to that. So the fact is that you have an individual who has tremendous synthesis, and anybody who tries to present Sahajanand Swami in a sectarian way is out of their mind. That is just absolutely not true under any circumstances. It is not sectarian. It is not fragmentary. It is not done to divide people. Even things like, the niyams for the sadhus, the 8-fold brahmacharya, they keep away from the ladies. He's trying to get them to sublimate their sex energy the way he had sublimated it, using the 8-fold process. And that is, again, we said, from the right-handed Tantra tradition. You see? It has its origin there. You'll be surprised how much influence the right and left-handed Tantra traditions have throughout the history of India. Even the Shivling is a Tantra tradition symbol. It talks about the at the sexual level, the male and female contact, and then beyond that is Jyotirling, and that Jyotirling, which is seen in Samadhi, is a divine linga. It is a divine form of Shiva, that is seen in trance, that is talked about by Bhagwan Swaminarayan in Vedas. That is Tantra. 100% it is Tantra. And anybody who doesn't understand this thing, come and talk to me personally. I'll show you all the references. It is absolutely mind-boggling and mind-blowing how he synthesized all of this together. And he showed the deficiencies He showed the deficiencies. Like in the Jaina tradition, they don't believe in God. He says that they're nastikas. They're not theists. They're atheistic. They just only believe in Atma. But he said no. Beyond that is Paramatma. Of course, Atma is there. So he showed the deficiency there. He showed the deficiency in left-handed tantra by saying that you've got people who are just misusing the sex energy. But use it in the right way. And for the grahasthas, he gave Garada number 2 Vachanamrut, and there's so many others also that show the fusion of how to interact with the Vishayas but have Vairagya at the same time. That's the most incredible thing. That's absolutely that is the culmination of left-handed tantra. Now, I can prove that anybody wants to learn that thing or understand how Sahajanand Swami integrated that. Come and see me, or I'm going to create more audios and all that. But it's never talked about by anybody. I guarantee what I'm speaking here right now, as far as I know, no Swaminarayan Sadhu has ever talked about this. Nobody has talked about this in the context of Vachanamrut. I mean, look at Sahajanand Swami himself in Madhya 13. He said, Ati Rudo Shabda Sparsh Ruparas Gandh. Highest level of the enjoyable objects. He says that if I try to even attach my mind to them, I'm not able to attach the mind to them. That is the culmination. But at the same time, he was interacting with the Vishayas. People were adorning him with jewels and different dresses and all different kinds of dishes of food. He says all this thing is there, but I'm totally beyond all that. That is what is that? That is the fusion of left and right-handed tantra, where there is total mixture of bhakti, the devotion to God, along with the realization of the Atma. It's the most incredible fusion of Ashtanga Yoga, Vaishnava Bhakti, the Kundalini being awakened completely. I mean, you just name it, it's there. In Sahajanand Swami, in that body, you name it and it's there. You name it, meaning all the tattva of the Adhyatmic tattva is there. Highest level of compassion, Karuna Sindhu, highest level of ahimsa, highest level of protecting the devotees. I mean, it's so much beyond any description. How this is possible in one being, placing people in trance, thousands of people in trance. How that is possible? What kind of power is that? What is that? Worthy of research. So all of this thing is really, really remarkable. I mean, if you look at the developments now, even from the field of psychology and sociology, neurology, neuropsychology, all these fields and these developments, they are still only in the realm of the physical body and the subtle body to some extent. They haven't even got to the causal body or the Atma. And Sahajanand Swami is talking even way beyond all that, from the spiritual worlds, beyond the spiritual worlds. Now think about that. So this is what is not clear. It's very difficult to understand all this, because Bhagwan Swaminarayan or Sahajanand Swami, it is at the highest pinnacle of spirituality. And it is no wonder there is so much confusion in society today, because there's no background to understand all this thing. And that background is so extensive, and it is so highly synthesized, and you can study it in a lot of depth is one thing. But at the same point, here's another very miraculous thing. That highest level of spirituality, he spoke to the villagers who were not even learned at all, just ordinary people. He gave this direct teaching, total synthesis. This was his nature. Even when as Nilkant Varni, he had that extract of the scriptures. His nature was to extract, find the final extract and stay with that. Leave all the other stuff aside. That was his point. You see? So, you will find, from the yogic point of view, all Ashtang Yoga is there. You will find the awakening of the Kundalini. That's mentioned inside the Vedas also. This is mentioned about the chakras. It's mentioned in Garada Pratham 49 also. That's mentioned there. It's mentioned about Samadhi, about the different deities or different forms of God inside the chakras. This is also mentioned there. You see, about the different transcendental worlds, like Vaikuntha, Goloka, Shvetdvipa, all this thing is mentioned. Again, if you look at these words, these are connectors with the Vaishnava tradition. If you connect it with the Shaiva tradition, people who worship Devi and Shiva, goddess and Bhagwan Shiv, he's talked about the second Kailas. Yeah, I'll give you my own experience with this. In Delaware, we have a beautiful Hindu temple in Hokkaisan, and there's some extraordinary pandits who are like proficient in the Shiva worship, So I had learned some things from them, and I had asked them about Kailas. I said, look, there's a second Kailas. They said, how do you know this? He said, it's taken them years to know that there is actually something called the second Kailas beyond the 14 lokas. Sahajanand Swami has put that inside the Vedas. Amazing stuff is there. So, folks, there's no end to how much can be said. This is just a second part here. I'm going to get into a lot more things here, but I wanted to make these recordings. I've been wanting to make them for a long time. And I said, let's just get this done. I pray to Bhagwan that he gives me the intelligence to make them. There's a tremendous amount to be said about anything. About any of this. I think many of the sadhus in Swaminarayan do know about this, but they're not in a position to talk about a lot of these things, probably because they don't have the audience for it. That could be because the audience they already believe in a certain way, certain Guru Parampara, certain bhajans are there, certain artis and bhajans, and things are moving according to a certain organization, and everybody's just moving along that way. But my intention in this mind is to open up the spirituality completely with every interconnection possible, with keeping Sahajanand Swami in the center about the spirituality that he preached, where everybody can tap into that without any kind of divisiveness and can gain something extraordinary, from his life and from his spiritual teachings and his realizations. All right, thank you very much.